When I grow up, I want to be an NBA basketball player.
When I grow up, I want to be a famous soccer player.
When I grow up, I want to be a professional football player.
When I grow up, I want to be a professional cheerleader.
How many of us grew up wanting these exact same things, yet we find ourselves accepting less than we dreamed of as a child? Trauma, adversity, unfair circumstances, you name it. Totally understandable, yet, is it really? Here at I'm 1% Possible, we explore the unsung heroes, the everyday, unassuming individuals that you may have never heard of, but they all have one thing in common. When life struck them, they struck back. Ladies and gentlemen, a good friend, and I'd call him a Ranger buddy, but I never finished school. Jimbo, James Fiser, one of my favorite human beings on today's podcast. Welcome, my man.
Yeah, good to be here, man.
Looking fantastic with that beard. Loving that jersey. Jimbo's my classmate, good friend, and I was actually honored I was in his wedding. You guys
Yep.
been married how long now?
Now you're testing me, but coming up on 10 years now.
10 years, 4 kids, and
Five.
how many? 5. The 5th one just came out, what, 2 weeks ago? 3?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago now, 4. Yeah.
And how many moves?
Oh, shoot. Probably 6, somewhere around there.
Just to name a few.
Yeah.
Currently active duty in the transition process,
Mhm.
getting ready to go fight human and child trafficking. Man, there's nothing you can't do, is it?
No, just excited to keep serving in different ways.
Well, I just got to brag on you for a little bit. I told this story without names, but for those who remember, the guy who bet his tab on me to finish a ruck march, one of them's right here. And without your guidance and your mentality, I would have never finished that thing. So I'm forever indebted to you in that, from just your guidance and as a mentor and a friend. You've always been one of the realest guys I've ever known, and probably the most selfless. You even let me borrow your truck for your extended stay at Ranger School because I didn't have a vehicle.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Said, all I asked is that you get the oil changed. Like, well, I think that's the least that I can do. So that's James Fiser for you.
Yeah, well, I wasn't driving it at the time, so I don't know what else good it would have been, what other good it would have been doing.
Oh, same old Jimbo. So, long and short, you were born and raised in Florida.
Yep.
Currently an infantry major. God, it sounds weird. I'd be a major right now.
Yeah.
And spent most of your growing years in St. Louis. How do you end up through that trajectory at the United States Military Academy?
Oh, well, I think for all the areas that I've needed to improve in life, one of the areas that I was always really blessed in is I always had a clear direction or an idea of what I wanted to do or an idea of what I needed to fix or work on. And ever since I was a little kid, I was really all very consumed with reading and learning about military history. Always really took up on it, even back when I was 6 or 7. And I remember I was probably somewhere between 6 and 8, and I was at my grandparents' house doing the same thing, finding every book on the shelves that I could find to read about military history and stuff like that. And my dad showed me these flyers he had gotten for the different service academies. And I know he had West Point. I think he had the Air Force Academy on there as well. And I remember looking at the flyer for the United States Military Academy and seeing those plumed hats and saying, "There's no way you're ever going to find me at that place because you got to wear that stupid uniform." Um, that was
Oh,
my initial reaction. But, growing up in a family with a dad and a granddad who both were private pilots with just little planes, kind of a hobby type of thing. And then one of my deepest personal secrets is that I was in the Civil Air Patrol as a young man in high school and middle school. So
don't
I thought I
judge me.
wanted to, yeah, yeah, no, that's okay. And I really thought I wanted to be in the Air Force. And of course, like everybody, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But I had grown up flying, doing that with my dad and granddad quite a bit. And then I found out that the Civil Air Patrol had this program where you could go and get your face kicked in by a bunch of pararescuemen and combat controllers for a week during the summer. And I went and I was like, oh, that's the hardest thing you can do. Let's go do it. Let's see how it goes. And I went and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I watched, full bird colonels in the Air Force that were fighter pilots turn around and gawk at E3s that were in Air Force Special Operations. And I'm like, oh, I can tell who the big dog is here. So I realized pretty quickly that I wanted to do something like that. So I went back and did some more training with them. Um,
And you're
and
how
I'm
old at this point?
between, like 15 and 17 was the time that I was doing that stuff. Um, and So when it came time to do those, did you do those programs over the summer where you go and visit West Point for a
Of
week and
course.
then, yeah.
Summer Leader Seminar. Yes, I did.
Yeah. So I did all three, and I went to the Air Force because I really thought this Air Force Special Operations thing was what I wanted to do. Then I went to the Army because it seemed analogous, and then I went to the Navy to confirm I didn't like the Navy, and
Great.
I confirmed that. That didn't take long at all. And I went to the Air Force one, and I found that I was like not. I was the odd guy out. Like they were not looking for that attitude. They were.
Uh-huh.
They
I went
were.
to Air Force also, and I quickly realized I called my dad and said, "Can I come home? This is stupid."
No, I mean they do good stuff, and they train differently than we do in the Army, and I think there's good reason for it because
Agreed.
they
They don't need the skill set. It's just a
yeah
different
we need
type of
we
person.
yeah we need a different skill set out of those folks on the whole than we need out of an Army leader. Um, but yeah, that was their conclusion to me, where they were like, "Hey, we don't really think you're that good of a fit here. There's like one guy maybe that we can find that you could talk to about that type of stuff, but." Those people are weird and we keep them in the closet. And then I went to West Point, and man, I bought that 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 Kool-Aid hook, line, and sinker. They had just the right amount of dodgeball and watching
Uh-huh.
Band of Brothers and just
Yep.
enough yelling at you to make you feel cool, but not enough to really get you that worried. Uh,
Yes, sir.
so I thought it was awesome, and it was a big flip of the script there at that point in my life because I'd spent so much time thinking I wanted to do the other thing. But no, I'm really grateful that all that went down the way it did. God's plan is always better than our plan,
Amen to that.
and it was right. It was definitely the right way to go. So that's how I ended up with you doing the thing at West Point.
Now, I'm curious. 6, 7, 8 years old. That's even earlier than I started. What did you feel when you either saw or heard the Twin Towers go down? And was that driving you in any calling of duty or direction?
It wasn't like a watershed, keystone moment
Okay.
that brought about something that wasn't already there. It just only further solidified what I was already certain of at that age. So I think it was fourth grade for me when that happened.
Same.
Definitely clearly remember it. But but no, that just added to didn't bring about anything transformative.
Okay. So you end up at West Point until that point in your life, and you have how many brothers and sisters?
One brother and one sister.
Okay. You're the
Yep.
oldest, correct?
Hmm.
So had you gone through any, what you may not now consider trauma, but as a high schooler or younger, had you gone through anything that you're like, man, I really have to overcome this?
Um, Not really. I don't think I thought of it in that way. I mean,
Okay.
everybody experiences hardship in different ways. I was definitely bullied a ton as a kid, both in grade school and then in high school. But I was a dumb bully because I was the kid that got bullied that would go see the other kid that got bullied and then try and get in the way to defend the other kid so that I could add some more bullying on top of me. And
You've
while
always been a protector.
but I mean that, and it just took it kind of. I mean, that's always been a good way to approach difficult times. Is you think about others more instead of yourself. You put yourself in other people's shoes, or step out of your own perspective, and that helps you, try and do what's right about whatever it is that's going on.
Okay. So at this point, your your bullying or your trauma you may consider somewhat self-induced. Is that accurate?
Uh, no, no, but I definitely furthered it by, you know, instead of maybe avoiding that guy that was the problem, I'd go out of my way to insert myself to maybe try and help somebody else not get that same treatment.
Knowing you, that does not surprise me in any capacity, in a good way.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is what it is. No, it was good. Definitely helped toughen me up. My siblings were both homeschooled, and I went from private school and grade school and middle school to public school for high school. So that was, um,
That's a
I mean,
transition in itself.
it was, and I mean, I wasn't the most obedient, respectful kid either. I had a lot of things to grow up in and improve on, and I think that there was definitely some contributing that probably contributed to my parents saying, "Hey, we'll homeschool the younger two, but not that guy." Um, and I think that was good for me. Get beat up a little bit, and I think that um, the combination of that, my upbringing, being raised by some really faithful, God honoring parents who set the right example for me and encouraged me in the right way, even though it took me quite a long time to fully fall in line and really do the right thing in a holistic sense. That combined, proper discipline and upbringing with uh, getting roughed up a little bit, I think gave me an attitude and a perspective that allows me to talk to people or interact with people that I probably otherwise wouldn't be able to reach.
I agree. And as always, your perspective is very grounded and never victim focused, even if you are the victim of the situation. So that
Yeah.
right there, I think, is a heavy lesson to learn for anybody. I would argue society as a whole. But that actually that reminds me of, well, let's answer this. I'm going to go forward to go backwards. So you and I met at the pre-ranger course. I didn't know you at school. We went through that. Then we rolled into ranger school. How long did you spend in something that could have been as short as 59, 60 days?
I don't know, but I think when we start, sometime early mid August.
Give or
So,
take, maybe in
yeah.
July. I don't exactly remember.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had started the pre-ranger stuff in late June, early July, something like that, and then the school started, ranger school itself started sometime in early or mid August, and I finally got out of there early December of that same year. So when people ask me if I was a summer ranger or a winter ranger, I can say yes. Uh,
I specifically remember because I was only there with you for one short stint through Darby, and you had gotten unfairly recycled. What a lot of
yeah,
people don't know is that you are a weapons expert, and you may not accept that, but the amount of firearms training that you have was probably more than some of those guys could ever dream of. And I remember there was a malfunction where the weapon went off, and you said, "No, look, I had nothing to do with this, made it do it again. And they said, well, either way, it doesn't matter. We don't like you and you are going to do this again. And we were just like, Roger that. Okay.
Yep.
I'm curious. Was there anything else that went through your head at that point?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, that was a bit of a big brother moment. Um, no, because that was definitely not what you hope to have happen. But um, at the end of the day, like it was just at the time it was just a job to be done, and I think it was a combination of positive motivating factors, things like just recognizing the job that needed to be done and staying focused on the task at hand. Um, I think a big part of it too was it was a really cool opportunity that that program that we were doing to be able to go do Ranger School before IBULIC, which is an abnormal thing. It resulted in uh, maybe we didn't necessarily all know one another, but we were all from the same or similar backgrounds, focus areas during our time at West Point. So it was a um, really awesome group of guys to be able to go through something like that with all the buddies from combat weapons and the rugby team and the football team, all the folks that you would kind of expect to be more into that type of stuff. Did that with a couple other folks with the same mindset besides. But there was also, if I'm being honest, there were also negative motivators there too. You meet people throughout your career, and I had people in the back of my mind that I would kind of get ticked off about it and be like, hey, if this guy can do it, then by golly, there's no way you're going to get me to not do it. And
There's what I'm looking for. Give me the raw truth here.
yeah,
You get told by no fault of your own that you are going to have to redo something that you shouldn't have to do. And you prove them with logic and facts wrong. And the RI goes, probably something along the lines of, look here, third lieutenant, go fuck yourself. You're going to do this again.
well, yeah, I had shown them. They said, "Hey, I went in. I proved that I the validity of what I was saying." Um, and they said, "Man, I don't know what to tell you, Ranger." And I said, "Well, I know what you're supposed to tell me. You're supposed to tell me to return to training. This is not an issue now." And he said, "Well, they're already on their way to pick you up to come talk to the battalion commander. So you're still going to go talk to him." So I went and talked to him. All right, Ranger. So you had a negligent discharge. No, sir, I didn't. This is the situation, and this is how I explain it. He's like, well, what's the name of the RI that you showed it to? And I don't know how,
Right.
but I remembered his name and said, all right, get out of here. I'm going to call him. So he calls me back in and says, um, he says, well, you've got quite a lot of experience with this, don't you? And I said, well, I fail to see how that's relevant, but I do. He said, well, you ran a lot of this training, did a lot of these competitions. Yes, I did. And he said, well, if you had to say what you were more proficient with, would it be the saw, which is what the malfunction happened with, or would it be with an M4? And I was like, well, sir, that sounds like a really loaded question. Um, and I failed to see how it's relevant. I mean, while I
Right.
obviously have more experience with the M4, um, you know,
But the weapon
that
malfunctioned. It is what it
that's
is.
not really valid. And he just kind of looked down, I think, and he just said, well, here's the deal, Ranger. You can either recycle or go to the house. I said, well, all right, well, you put it that way, sir. I guess I'll recycle. Um, and so that was round one. But they got me again. So I think it was good. It was good development in the sense that, um, yeah, there were definitely those negative motivating factors there too that um, probably contributed to carrying me through that time frame. But that wasn't good enough. I had to rep that out one more time after another probably more blatant.
Right. I would argue you were targeted round two because there
Yep.
was probably a bit of a ego check to the Ranger instructors. And that's just the way that it goes. But as a second
Yeah,
lieutenant,
it's fine.
we didn't understand that. And we're like, where's the justice? We're basically being hazed, borderline tortured to earn this half moon badge, and you won't let me do it, even though I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Now they had said that because we were before our time at Ibulloch, that they didn't think that soldiers were going to trust us, and because of that, we were going to be a no go on our patrols and have to recycle. In my case, or in other people's cases, some cases, I think some guys got kicked out. Um,
Oh yeah.
and Yeah, and so I got to go in to interview for that. I was getting browbeat a little bit by the captain that was in charge of that group, and he was insulting me a little bit. And the first sergeant cut him off and said, "Hey, sir, we looked at your peer evaluations. We saw that you you maxed those scores out. We're not gonna, and I quote, we're not gonna mess with your grades anymore. You're just gonna have to do Darby phase a third time." So Roger that.
What I'm curious, and I'm asking this, I know where I was at. I was in a very weak mental state at this point, and I wasn't anywhere near going through what you did. And I was just like, this is what the army is? Like, I thought I was here to be developed and gain these amazing skills, and this is the holy grail of everything that is the infantry. And I found the exact opposite. And I was pretty disenfranchised at
Mm.
that point. Um, Honestly, it took me about 5 years to come back around, at which point I then got medically discharged and I was done.
Yep.
But how did you ground yourself or rectify it in such a matter of fact way? Well, doesn't mean it's fair. The mission has to be done. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, the primary thing definitely was that um, it had taken me quite a long time, but I had become a Christian towards the end of our junior year, beginning of our senior year at West Point, and had really, from that point forward, it really dedicated. It had tried to be dedicated in growing and learning in my knowledge of Scripture, in my relationship with God, and so that was absolutely a major part of what was going on when I was recycled there, just hanging out, sitting on my thumbs. Um, Reading the Bible was one of the main ways that I was able to stay focused and be reminded of the right way to be thinking through things. And then I think combined with that is having an attitude that was more broad and grounded allowed me to recognize that, as much as all of our time at West Point, all your time within the infantry, you're going to find out in about 5 seconds if you're an officer in the infantry that doesn't have a ranger tab. You're going to be evaluated differently, or you're going to be looked upon differently. Um,
100%.
and that in some ways, I'm sure that there are altruistic reasons for why they talk things like that up so much. It is a difficult challenge for a lot of folks to put themselves through, and so talking it up, making it seem very weighty to people. I think there's probably a goal there to try and make it um, something that people are more ready for, or put more importance in. Um, but the way that they treat people sometimes, especially at iBullock, at least during the time that we were there, that
Right.
you were treated as a near
On
near
skulls.
royalty. If you
I was.
what
You were
yeah,
not.
yeah,
You
but
were
if
you were
yeah,
elevated like a king.
yeah, and I mean to a harmful degree, because at the end of the day, because we would have guys from the group that I was in, right? We had the guys that weren't successful; they were looked down upon significantly, and then the guys that were successful could do no wrong. Guys would not show up to training; they would be dirtbags about other stuff, and that attitude in a lot of cases at that time was, hey, they already got theirs, so.
Right.
Um, so they can do no wrong, which is absolutely wrong. And I think connecting very early on, before, during, and then after, that a ranger tab doesn't make a man. No one event makes a man or a woman. It is the totality and the continuation of the way that you approach your life and live your life that determines um, your quality and how we should look at that. I mean, I made a mistake earlier today in homeschooling my oldest son, and thankfully he's a good-hearted young guy, and uh, and we're going to work through that just fine. But um, yeah, being able to look at that and recognize that Ranger Tab's really easy to get. It's $8 for two at your local clothing and sales. It's not hard at all, um, and it is not. It's not the definition of anybody, and
I
will
would
be
agree.
it'll be doing us a disservice to look at anything in our lives as anything like that. Because if I can be a great guy at work, I can earn all the accolades, I can pass all the schools. But if I go home and I'm a dirtbag, I'm a dirtbag. If I flip that and I'm an awesome guy at home, I'm the best dad the world's ever seen. But I go to work and I'm lazy and I don't equip myself well by my responsibilities, I'm a dirtbag. Um,
I would
so
agree. How long did it take you to gain that perspective?
um, I mean, thankfully, I think that came along pretty quickly, and it just got more and more weighty. It meant a whole lot more, and there was a whole lot more to it as I continued to learn and grow, especially getting married, especially having kids. You know, doing jobs like company command in the army, where those things are stressed and pulled in opposing directions more aggressively, makes you realize how important prioritizing things in life is. So yeah.
I would agree. It's really cool to hear people say that because I know maybe a handful of folks who I would argue have done the thing and are pretty grounded about it. And then a lot more people buy into, well, I am bigger, better, stronger, faster, because that's what you are told. That's how you are treated. And so I'm impressed. No surprise. I just know you. I knew this was going to be a really cool interview. But to hear you say something like that when I was on the other end of it my entire career, and I never had anybody give me a chance because I didn't have the right badges. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
roger that. So, so at this point, you went to where for your platoon leader time?
I went to Fort Wainwright, Alaska.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How to, obviously, so for people who don't know, when you're coming out of West Point, you basically create a wish list where you want to go. Most of it, if not all of it's depending on some sort of ranking structure within your performance. I ended up in Fort Bliss, Texas. You end up in Fort Wainwright, Alaska. And why did you choose that? And what are some of the goods and bads that you learned there beyond how to deal with that level of cold?
Yeah. Shoot. Yeah. Um, well, I didn't choose to go there, is the first thing. I was not the highest ranked cadet the world's ever seen, but far
Okay.
from it, actually. My ranking directly reflected what I felt was important at the time. So I doing pretty well physically, did well militarily, but academically, I was holding myself back quite a bit, and I shouldn't have. I should have been more dedicated in that area. But so I like most people at that age, and when I came back to be a West Point instructor, I definitely took every opportunity to try and counsel people differently. But it's very common, you know, people pick the historic, Band of Brothers units. They pick the
Yep.
101st, the 82nd, the 173rd,
Or they want to go to
and
Hawaii.
yeah, but to me, I really love the outdoors. I really wanted to channel my inner backwoodsman. So I really wanted to go um, to Fort Richardson, the airborne unit in Alaska.
Okay.
But far down my line, I think probably choice number, 5 or 6 was Fort Wainwright, and that was the one that I ended up getting out of the system that we were normally in. But what was neat was um, when we did that program to go to Ranger School before IBULIC, when we got out of it, the folks that successfully completed that found that they could name it and claim it at that time. So I had a lot of buddies who had gotten posts that they um, weren't maybe satisfied with or had thought of other places they could go, and they could call somebody up and say, "Hey, I just did this thing. Um, Sign me up for that cool spot overseas or something else." And a lot of guys were doing that. And I actually only had orders at the time to Alaska or to USARAC. I didn't have orders specifically to Fort Wainwright, and I was like, "Oh man, maybe I can get this in a little bit too." Because of course I know my sheet at West Point said Fort Wainwright, but my orders just say USARAC. So I
Okay.
made a phone call to somebody up in Alaska and said, "Hey, I've got all this stuff, got what you're looking for." Not knowing how lieutenants are a dime of 500 at
Mm-hmm.
the time. Um, and they said, "Okay, yeah, thanks for letting us know. We'll take a look at it." But as pretty much as soon as I got off the phone, I was convicted, and I was like, "You're doing something that you got no business doing. The soldiers
Mm.
need good leaders everywhere, and um, you need to be accepting and take advantage of the lot that you've been dealt." So I called them right back and said, "Hey, I know I just called you about this. You were very helpful, but I would appreciate it if you didn't do what I just asked you to do. And I want to go to the place that I was originally slotted at Fort Wainwright." So that's how I actually got up there. Um,
Wow.
so
As always, impressed with your character.
no, well, that is begotten through the making of mistakes. I have plenty of stories on that stuff too.
Oh yeah, and I think that those are important to share. But at the end of the day, you we're often told, and we're held to a standard at school. We don't lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. And I think for all of us, in some ways, it just taught us how to not get caught lying, cheating, and stealing. Not
For most
necessarily to do the right thing, just to not get caught doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and it's really. Have you ever read that study, "Lying to Ourselves"? It's the study the Center for Army Lessons Learned did on dishonesty within the Army.
I have not, but I'm curious what you have to say.
It is. I mean, it's. I mean, essentially, what they did is I think it was back in right around the time we graduated. I think it was 2014 or 2015 that they published it. And the Center for Army Lessons Learned found that um, there was a culture of systemic dishonesty in the Army that was brought about by a lot of different reasons. I'm being evaluated based on the reports that I send up, so I'm naturally incentivized to send up a positive report. Some jobs, like the maintenance world, is very they're evaluated by the
Right?
metrics that they report and things like that. So there's a high incentive to do wrong there. Um, and then just the fact that you have
Or
you
being
have more.
browbeaten for being honest. There's
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and there's more overt requirements time wise for a given calendar year than there is work time in a given calendar year. So you're in a situation where you have to either have the integrity to say, I made a informed decision as a leader to forego this obligation or to not do this requirement, or you have to say that you did it, or you have to cut corners and then kind of be able to say that you did it. But now we've started the ethical fading problem where did we really do it? Did we do it to the standard? Um, and I can only speak to the Army. I wouldn't imagine that other professions are um, without similar temptations and risks when it comes to stuff like that. But it's a huge problem. And as I've grown, and that was definitely part of what I learned during my time as a lieutenant, and in the different roles that you take on there, was how pervasive that was. Um, you learn early on that if you really want to live with integrity, you're going to have uh, You might slip up, as I did a few times, and you're going to have to take responsibility for that. But you're going to have to be ready for hard days, long days, harder work, more friction, more stress in trying to get something done, um, and that's okay. But it's definitely part of it.
How did you find that balance? Or again, what drove you to find that balance? Because I found that from the bottom to the top, exactly what you described. I mean, even the phrase that we all just kind of laugh and joke about, but there's only one thief in the army and everybody else is trying to get their stuff back. Like,
Yep.
I mean, this is just reality of daily life. Whether, hey, I'm missing X, Y, Z on a layout, and your E4s go, don't worry about it, sir, we'll take care of it. Next thing you know, they magically appear. Or, I mean, what are some of the things? How did you learn those lessons? Probably in some ways the positive way, and in others the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I think the biggest or the most valuable takeaway that I kind of collated about it later in life was I kind of look back on those experiences and how they came about because, there were definitely things where there were, spots on different forms that you would have to fill out and you'd have to put dates down for it. And there was a really common one for me was the counseling form or the evaluation form. And you had a place where you had to put dates that you had counseled a soldier. And I had always grown up and, we get trained how to do that. And there's different philosophies about it. And I had adopted the philosophy of, I just need to be direct and transparent in my everyday interactions with my soldiers. And I didn't at the time, being a younger guy, didn't recognize the importance of really sitting down one on one and telling somebody straight up, this is where you sit, this is where you're succeeding, this is where you're failing, this is where you rank within the team that we have. Um, and so when I would fill out those evaluations, I wouldn't think anything of it. I'd just say, hey, let's pick a day that's not on a Sunday. I talk to my soldiers every day. We can call that counseling and we'll put it down. What I didn't realize until later is that at the time. Maybe they've fixed this now, but I don't know that they have. If you didn't put dates in there, you couldn't submit it. So if you tried to be honest and say,
Wow.
hey, I missed this time frame. I wasn't able to actually sit down and talk to this guy here. So I don't have a date to put. They wouldn't accept that evaluation, um, which to me seems, problematic because that
We created another
furthers.
problem by being honest. But
Yeah, exactly. Because if you wanted to go up and say, hey, I I neglected to get this part of my duties done over the course of the last 6 months, there was no system for you to record that in any way. They would have said, well, you got to come up with a date. So tell
right.
us the date you like. Um, so what I realized the summative thing is that I realized that competence is was a prerequisite to wisdom. With wisdom being obviously the ability to rightly apply knowledge to your circumstances and different situations. But if I didn't have competence in what that system is, how it works, what the implications of it are, do I know, my job? You know, can't count the number of times where you're in a situation, and if you aren't at least conversant, if not have a level of expertise in a given area, you don't know that somebody's teaching the wrong thing or that they require a correction. But so that building that competence was a prerequisite to having the wisdom to rightly engaging with all those different situations. But I think so that's kind of the holistic thing. But the direct answer to your question is more that um, where it's about where are you going to find your purpose in life. If your purpose is I want to be able to leave work with everybody liking me, if your purpose is I want to get great evaluations and be ranked X out of whatever, um, or higher or something like that, if I want to earn awards or be seen in this way, um, then you're going to find yourself chasing that, or just find yourself riding a roller coaster of the the ebbs and flows of everyday life and the challenges that come up. But if you're grounded in principles, and in my case, specifically grounded in what God's called me to, I got endurance for days. And and that's where that comes from. And so, when I found the same thing with when you take the ethical thing, I remember it was a maintenance issue. I was an XO, and I was trying to get them to properly record all the problems that were wrong with our strikers, which, believe it or not, don't work that well when it's -20 to -60 out.
They
And
didn't work at Fort Bliss either, just so you know.
I can't imagine. But I would go in and I'd say, hey, here's all our problems. I need them to be uploaded so we can actually fix these things. And they say, okay. But then I'd look at the records and I could see they weren't uploaded. And I found out that our maintenance chief at the time, he knew that their evaluations were tied to their readiness rating. So he was not he was not logging that information. And I spent time and time again, go back to force him to do it. I even um, went and eventually after several months of fighting that out at every level I could, I went and even talked directly to the battalion commander about it because I was one of the senior lieutenants at the time, and I respected my battalion commander and said, "Hey, sir, this is the problem I'm running into. I feel like we're being dishonest um, in a systematic way, all the way up to the highest levels of the military. This is what we're telling them that we're ready to go do our job, and we're not, and I know it. Um, what can we do about this?" And his response was, well, hey, Jim, if we report honestly, they're going to take our money for training away and they're going to make us do maintenance with it. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm not going to get help there either. Because now I know that's not true. At the time, I figured it wasn't true, but I didn't know for certain.
Well, but he's also graded on his level of readiness.
Sure. Yeah.
So that I guess my question for you is this, truly, because I understand both sides. How do you, for you, go, here's black and white regulation. Here's the letter of the law. They maybe don't match. And then reality's maybe somewhere in the middle. How did you find where to land on that?
Yeah, you're gonna trigger like my West Point instructor tirades here, but
what I'm here for. I want honest truth because we don't have enough of it in the world. And I'm not saying this to get a certain response from you.
Yeah.
But you've always struck me as a very black and white, ethical. I got to do the right thing all the time, and I'm gonna be honest. I do my best with that, but there's times where I go, Roger that, sir. I'm gonna put down this date. I'm gonna mark this. I'm gonna do this, even though I knew it wasn't the right thing because it's like, well, I can't do anything about this. So again, I would just go throw my hands up like, I'm a dumb lieutenant. What do I know?
Well, there are definitely times where I've made mistakes in the same way, like I said. But no, what the broader topic that I think you're bringing up that I'll just put a name on it. We're talking about the gray. We're talking about the gray that everyone loves to talk about. Throw the gray out there, and that can solve a lot of moral ethical problems with people because they said, "Oh, well, you just got to be comfortable operating in the gray." Well,
100%.
my response to that,
I found myself becoming very good at it. Whether that's right, wrong, indifferent, that's what I found reality to be. So that's why I think that's it up.
Yeah, and I think most of us do find that. And the reason why I said what I said about the West Point instructor thing is, I mean, that's a common thing for them at that younger age too. I primarily taught sophomores, juniors, seniors, and the different things that they had me involved in up there, and they'll definitely ask about that stuff. And the response I would give them that I think was earned in the School of Hard Knocks is that what leaders have a responsibility to do is to kill the gray. So to explain that, as a leader, I can look at any given situation, and there are going to be different areas of friction. What do leaders do? One of the simplistic ways of describing what a leader does is a leader moves to the point of friction to resolve it, right? But then the question becomes, if I have multiple forms of friction in different domains existing simultaneously, how do I prioritize those? So, you could have a tactical point of friction. You could have a moral ethical point of friction being the two, most clear ones. And I would argue that as a leader of an organization, your responsibility is primarily to the moral ethical point of friction over the tactical operational, how do we get the things that we're doing today done type of stuff. Um,
long as everyone's alive.
sure, and but even to a certain degree, I think an argument could be made. You know, that's why we have the levels of leadership that we have. You know, there are different levels of severity to different problems, obviously.
Agreed.
Um, but when if I encounter a moral ethical challenge, that's something that is going to be something that somebody has to live with for the rest of their lives. And as a leader, I look at that and I say, this is tough. This is gray. I'm going to tell you to operate in the gray. 9 times out of 10, I know what they're going to do, and it's probably not the right thing. But we're all just not going to say anything about it because that's easier for us, right?
Fair enough.
Or I'm going to choose a course of action that distances me from direct responsibility for that situation. But I think the root of all those things, because we can power everything, you know, when we look at anything, we can power it down to its root motivator. And the root motivator in doing something like that, I think, in one way, um, selfishness. You could look at it because I don't want to have to be the one to carry this football or to eat this bad sandwich, or probably even more on target is cowardice. You know, I'm lacking the moral courage to really call a spade, and so I think it's the responsibility of a leader to make gray black and white for subordinates. And you know, one way in which I did that as a company commander is I said, "Hey guys, check it out. You know, if you ever feel like you're in between a rock and a hard place, I get it. I know where we work. I know the type of strain that you guys are underneath. If you really feel like you're in a situation where you need to report something inaccurately or change the way that we're going about something, you bring it to me. And if it's got to be done, I'm going to do it, not you." Because I wanted that to be, if there was ever, you know, not, I didn't want to say, hey, universally, we're never going to have to encounter a difficult challenge like this. But I did want to say that if we did encounter that challenge, that was my cross to bear, not theirs. Because I've seen too many examples of people, either myself or you know other people that I cared about that have worked underneath leaders that have not tackled a problem directly and have said, "Hey, I'm going to leave that up to you," and now that other person has to deal with it, and they sleep soundly at night because they didn't have the
They
courage
didn't
to
put
face
their
the
name
issue.
on it.
Yeah.
How was that received by your lieutenants and your squad leaders and your first sergeant?
Uh, Not easily in a lot of cases. It's a it depends on the situation, you know, and everybody's different, but it was really cool to see in a lot of different ways. You know, my first XO, pretty secular guy, really hard hitting, aggressive dude. Um, Love him to death, but he not a Christian guy. What actually, kind of ironically, he was, I think, the only non-Christian officer that worked underneath me while I was in company command for a year and a half. But he actually came out of that relationship at the end, and he would call me and talk to me several times after that and say, "Hey, you know what? Like that working with you on things like that helped me see the importance of that, and it's changed the way that I think about these things, and I have a much more um, militaristic approach to it these days." Other guys, you know, they would try it out. We had one guy for Ranger School. You know how that form where a commander has to say you've done X, Y,
Of
and Z
course.
before you can go. So we had that, and we had a commander that rightfully was pushing guys to get people to go to Ranger School, which is what you should do. Great way to get people trained, give them confidence, and
Well, and also makes you look good.
it does. But I mean, it's a great way to make an organization better.
I would agree.
And so, of the 5 company commanders, I was firmly losing as far as numbers of people sent to Ranger School because I just didn't. Uh, every unit is unique, but the unit that I was with was going through a tough time, and people needed to do some work to get to the point where they were ready to go as individuals or as a collective, and a lot of different things. So, if I didn't believe that they had met the standards to be successful, I wasn't going to send them. A lot of other folks, you know, I'm sure you've seen other techniques where um, if they're breathing, send them to the pre air assault course, pre ranger course, whatever. And then
Yeah.
you know
Make it their problem. Let them figure it out.
we're supporting the initiative, but you know maybe we'll have a 0% go rate. We'll see. And but And that too is
It's a
in their
method.
defense, it's a technique too. But that just wasn't the technique I was using at the time, and I was getting beat up a little bit about it. And I think my lieutenants knew I was getting beat up about it, so they were trying to watch my back and just say, "Hey, let's get some people in." And I would say, "All right, have we done these things? You know, we can get the guy down. You know, grab a compass, take the guy out during the workday. You know, do this land nav test. You know, pull the weapons out of the arms room, go to the pool and do the thing."
Right.
And I had one of my best lieutenants come and bring me the packet for one of our best NCOs, and say, "Hey, you know, we're ready to go." You say,
Hi,
"Hi,
little
Henry,"
man.
and I said, "Hey, you're handing me this form. I'm about to sign it. Has he done all these things?" He said, "No, he hasn't, sir." I'm like, "All right, sick. Glad that we've had this talk. Go do the thing and bring it back to me when it's ready." A couple days later, he brings it back, and I said, "All right, are we good?" He said, "Yep, we're good, sir." And so I signed it off. We sent him. He makes it through pre-ranger and he goes to ranger school, fails out in the water confidence test. And my lieutenant comes back up to me and says, "Hey, sir, you know what? I
We didn't
wasn't
do it.
honest with you before. We didn't do it." Um, and you know, it's not something I was going to string the guy up from a tree for or anything like that. But I think it was a good opportunity for him to learn and to recognize, hey, if we're going to say that we did the thing, it's simple. We just do the thing. If we need to say something else, then let's say it. But let's call it what it is.
Honestly, I bet that was pretty impactful. I can just imagine being under your tutelage. And that's surely not how I maybe have one leader like that, but you're the exception, I would say, and you probably realize that. Um, but what a cool opportunity for people to see we're going to do the work. And if you don't like it, I mean, no offense, bud, but there's the door. Like,
It's it's tough, and I mean, people are trying to get by. People are trying to get the thing done. You know, I've had first sergeants that, you know, trying to turn those numbers green, and they're going to do it behind closed doors until
of
you pick
course,
your head back up and wait a second, how did we get here? Um, and you know that it was my responsibility as the leader of the organization to do the best I could um, to hold people to the right standards so that whether they agreed with it or not, they could look themselves in the mirror and recognize they'd gone about things the right way. Um, but the danger with that, and the danger and the problem that I had in many ways during that time was that that pushes people really hard, and I have a high estimation of my own work ethic, and I have a high estimation of other people's capability, but um, even as a commander within the army, we don't have complete control over every situation that we're in. So where I would run into trouble is you know, if somebody's capability is 100% and I was pulling 90 out of them, I'm like, hey, you're still alive, man. You can still go home. You still got a family. I'd care about that too, but I know that we can squeeze a lot out of you here when that unforeseen, you know, hey, we got to get ready for Russia invading Ukraine. We got to get ready for this crazy mission that just came out of nowhere. If I wasn't holding enough of a safety buffer in there, something would happen that would take somebody over 100% without me intending for that to be the case. And that was a scary thing to see. Um, very humbling.
what did you learn through that experience?
Just that I need to do a better job of keeping my head up and out and seeing those things, and also just building a little bit more of a buffer in, having a little bit more patience with how things were brought about, and really where I could have most effectively done that, I think, was by communicating more clearly and directly. Like, you know, I'm a pretty clear and direct guy, but I could have been, in that case, I could have been even more clear and direct if I could have taken some of my time to my superiors and said, hey, you know, let me show you what I'm thinking. Let me show you the 50 problems that I think we have. These are the ones that I think are a priority. And as a result, I expect for the next X weeks, X months, we're going to struggle in these other areas. If I had been more deliberate about that, I think that would have really helped out in protecting my guys a lot better. But I didn't do that. So to the level that I should have. So I saw guys get pushed close to their breaking point, and that was tough. And that was, you know, really Yeah, that was not something I was proud of when I saw that happen in a couple instances.
I'm curious, how did your superiors handle your level of ethics?
Um, uh, various degrees. I mean, some guys are really supportive of that and appreciate that. I've been blessed to. I think one of the biggest traps that I was at risk of falling into with that is if you make that commitment to say, "Hey, I want to live and work with integrity, and I'm going to sign up for this harder way of living as a result of that," you can fall into this very kind of toxic. Um, I'm alone behind enemy lines, only guy doing the right thing. Nobody's with me on this, and that's just simply not true. Um, Now you may be in the minority in some cases, depending on where you are and who you're with, but there are great guys and gals all over the place that are also choking up on the bat where they're at and giving it all they got. And you may not be working right next door to them. They may not be in your exact same formation, but you're all on the same team and you're all running in the same direction. And I needed to do a better job of reminding myself of that. And I think I got to work together with some really great guys that let me do that. Um, to where when those times got tough, when it was rough, when I was dealing with somebody that's, you know, because I've had plenty of those talks where, hey, just sign this form. Everyone else signed it. I'm like, well, look at this. I'm showing you exactly where this is not
Right.
honest or this is not accurate. Well, everybody else signed it, so I don't know what your problem is. Uh, you know, I've had those talks, but when you can lean back on, hey, I know I'm not the only guy out there, and I'm doing this not for those more transient um, goals and aspirations, but I'm doing it because of the principles and the calling that or what is part of who I am. Then you can weather those storms a lot better.
So it sounds like we've basically gone through your platoon leader time, your XO time, your company commander time. What
Mhm.
brought you back to West Point?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was well, I guess to build on a little bit more. Um, Company command time. I'd always, from that background of from a little kid wanting to do a high speed, cool guy stuff, and then going to
And
West
you went
Point.
to the 101st, correct, for company command?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, really excited about that. And I was always kind of looking with an eye towards, maybe I'll go to the Ranger Regiment. And I was originally intending to do that as a lieutenant, but a combination of my timeline and the fact that I got sick and had to fight medical board during that time kind of precluded that opportunity. So it was really a choice between do I go back to West Point or do I try and pursue Ranger School as two things that I really felt like would be valuable callings. Um, with
You
Ranger
jumped
School,
over
obviously,
something that I think is really important. They
yeah,
gave you the easy out, if you will. And you said, I'm not going to take this. I remember talking to you about this. And even myself, I'm like, dude, why aren't you taking the army retirement?
yeah.
So why did you decide against it? And
I
and
just,
how did you go about proving yourself? Hey, no, I'm still fit for duty.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'd gotten ulcerative colitis and had like a smart infantry guy ignored it for many months, so I was bleeding out regularly. You know, Dealing with a lot of stuff. I'd lost about 50 pounds of muscle. Um, I was looking like a
Wow.
skeleton. Um, and finally went to the doctor and they said, "Hey man, like you're all washed up." And I just felt like it was still my calling was still to serve in the army, and that um, while God's plan may have included me not being in the army anymore, that it was what I've got the sense that was the right thing for me to do was to fight it tooth and nail, and whatever was decided after that, was what it was going to be. But I showed up at the high des office, which is the office where you do the medical retirement stuff. And they said, "Hey man, here's your stuff." And I said, "Well, I'm fighting this just so you guys know." And they said, "Well, nobody from this installation has ever successfully fought this. So good luck." And I said, "You're looking at them. Have a nice day." So I kept doing my job. I'd gone from I was a rifle company XO at the time, and they offered to let me just kind of take a side seat within the unit to kind of fight the MEB because they knew what I was doing. And I said, no, I want to be the HHCXO, which was
I
terrible.
want more responsibility.
So,
I want a
yeah,
harder job. This is Jim Fiser 2 and 2.
so I did that while working on it. And I had an awesome friend, several awesome friends, but some really great workout buddies, kind of in the same way as we had during our time at West Point. But awesome buddy Isaac, he was training up to go to Special Forces selection. So he kind of hitched his wagon to mine, and it became kind of a vindication thing where he and I would do, some insane training together, and I could go into my hearing with the Army to say, hey, these are the things that I've done. Here's the GPS track of an ultra marathon that my buddy and I ran together. And he just and my friend just had done that to watch my back and probably be there to pick me up if I croaked, midway. But
But before
um,
we go on, because I imagine you and I in that situation almost role reversed. What you did for me, someone is now doing for you. What does that feel like?
what do you mean? I'm sorry. Say that again.
So Ranger School, what
Yeah,
Isaac did for you did for me.
yeah.
What did that feel like to be on the receiving end of that?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, it definitely. Uh, there's different love languages out there. If you're into studying that type of stuff, and the acts of service one is definitely my love language. That's how I try and serve other people, and that's what they say is what you best receive as well. And to have a guy um, just not trying to run too much and not trying to be that guy that goes running with you and he's just two shoulders in front of you, just to show you he's a little bit faster, or that's always prodding you along. The guy that's just willing to be there with you and hang out in the suck, and recognize that you're trying to get through something and be there with you and just get in the trench. Everybody wants to give everybody a nice packaged, easy, efficient present. Hey, you're having a problem. Here's a present. Now you're not my problem anymore. But somebody that's willing to say, hey, I see you're down in a trench in a fight, and I'll get down in that trench with you. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, you don't
I
forget stuff like
agree.
that.
You don't. And it's cool. I mean, it sucks that you had to experience that, but it's cool that you had the support.
Yeah,
I find that's too often, especially in today's world, but even potentially in the military, we act like we're a team. It can be a very, very selfish environment because if you don't take care of your own or yourself or your reports or whatever, you're not going to have any progression. And that's pretty incredible that he did that for you. So thanks, Isaac. I have a feeling I know which Isaac you're talking about. So
yeah.
that's pretty incredible. So you get through that. You go back to the board and say, "You told me I couldn't. You're wrong." How does that conversation go?
It was pretty good. Yeah, no, it was awesome. I had a lot of support in the sense of the stuff that had preceded it, and then um, from the leaders that I'd worked for in the past. And I had a really great mentor who was actually one of the officers that worked with the combat weapons team when we were cadets. Um, he was in a very prestigious unit, and he was on the phone with me the night before and saying like, "Hey, I've got medics from the best unit in the army racked and stacked to call in and back you up on this. Like, you're the type of guy we want to keep in." And so, um,
Wow.
well, I didn't know exactly how it was going to go. It's a weird Cuba Gooding Jr. type of moment when you go in there and you're trying to prove that you can do the thing, and you're getting scrutinized like that. But it was my wife was there supporting me uh, with our daughter who had just recently been born. Um, so it was good, and we got through it, and we're able to proceed forward from there. Go down to Fort Benning for some training, and then go to Fort Campbell after that. So
That's pretty incredible, man. So at that point, obviously you do your company command. We talked about that.
yep.
You end up what drew you back to school minus understand and for those who don't understand the mindset, the dynamic, I mean, I think you would have been a fantastic regiment company commander. Just the way that you are, if you're talking about pulling out maximum potential, you're dealing with people who are borderline professional level athletes. Talk about finding potential. They're probably teaching you about your own potential.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. It's a they got some great a great team dynamic over there. But it just boiled down to, you know, that time in
I didn't want him to do it was one thing.
And,
wow,
and I think that's very important. So I got to bring this up. Thank you, Stacy, because that had always been a goal of mine. Obviously, I didn't get the right badges, but I was gonna do everything I could to get into the special operations world, whether that was special forces, Ranger Regiment, and part of me felt torn. I didn't. I had my first daughter at your wedding.
yeah.
And I said, my kids didn't sign up for this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a twofold thing too that we really, as an army and just as a world full of individuals would benefit from learning is when I really wanted to be the recon PL when I was in my first unit and competed for that and was blessed to be able to do that. And I immediately found that hey, these guys wearing the cool stuff, walking the cool walk, but they can't or they're talking the cool talk, but they can't walk the cool walk. They can't do their job. And
Mm,
that was a really cool thing to be a part of because I got to work with some really awesome soldiers and NCOs, and we got to the point where we were really good at our job. And that's not special operations, but it's got elements of the same
you're tip of the spear
culture.
within what you can be.
Yeah, and it was great, and that was a really amazing team to be a part of. I still see guys on Facebook from that time saying, "Hey, this is the coolest time, in my life to be able to be part of this team, part of this group that went out there and had so much success, and we pushed ourselves hard." And that was just so cool to be a part of. But what I realized is, you don't have to be in a unit to hold yourself to a given standard, you know,
Mm,
and you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training, right? So like, there's no light switch that flips when you get change the patch on your shoulder or you do anything else. It's good. You're going to be who you are. So that was the first class every day I taught at West Point. I would ask all the cadets, what does it mean to be elite? What's the definition of that word? Now, give me some examples of elite groups in your mind, and I get all the same,
right.
answers from Olympians to Delta Force and everything in between. And it said, given the definition, you know, let's look at the jobs that these different groups do. What makes one more elite than the other? Nothing. What's more elite, what makes you elite is the standard you hold yourself to and the people around you to. And there's nothing that says that you have to wait 4 years for that. Nothing that says you have to wait until you're in a given group for that. Um, so yeah,
Very
so that
wise. Very
that
wise.
that was definitely a
How
big
was
part of
that
that.
received?
Uh, Variably, there were a couple of guys that would. What was fun was in a classroom environment. Some folks were really ingrained in kind of the attitude about different units and different things that they had approached. But then within that class, I was able to hold them to a standard that maybe they weren't expecting, and in the process, they learned the hard way. But uh,
Careful what you wish for.
but nobody walked out of that class not learning that lesson. But the but what was as far as the West Point versus Ranger Regiment thing, as a company commander immediately preceding that, I had really had to ask a lot of my family, and none of us can do anything without our family to support us. I'm pretty worthless without my wife and children backing me up, whether I'm there with them or whether I just know they're at home, doing the right thing,
I agree.
and taking care of the family. And it was very common during that time as a company commander where I would maybe see the kids one night during the work week, maybe. I'd come home from work after Stacy was already asleep, and I'd wake up to go to work before she woke up. Um, and that was tough. That was tough for them. I knew that was a strain for Stacy to be raising two kids at home like that at the time. Um, and I didn't enjoy it myself. But yeah, with a third on the way. But um, and I mean the stuff we were dealing with was tough. You know, we had child abuse, you know, spousal abuse, stuff like that going on that we were trying to navigate and care for people through.
And
Um,
that's all within your unit that you're in charge of. I want to make that very clear.
yeah, yes,
Not at home.
no, not at all.
I bring that up because I dealt with the same thing. So a lot of
Yeah,
people don't understand. And I appreciate this, that when you join the military, as it is generally a very selfless thing, but the public goes, oh, these guys never do anything wrong. No, no, no. It's just a microcosm of society, and
yeah,
you're wearing a uniform. Really, not a whole lot has
mhm,
changed. We just theoretically have more ability to try and lead people in the right direction. But I mean, I had guys with drug abuse problems, alcohol abuse problems, domestic violence, et cetera, et cetera. And
yeah,
and a lot of that ends up getting most of your focus
mhm,
because now you can't deal with training because you've got to go deal with Soldier X and their problem.
yeah,
So
no. But no, after that time, it was a question of do we want to do something um, where I would be professionally fulfilled to be able to do the cool job, you know, tip of the spear, but put more of maybe a different type, but more strain on the family and more time away, more deployments, you know, a more ready um, atmosphere. But it would be very fulfilling, would be very
oh,
um,
absolutely. For you,
valuable.
it's been
Yeah,
very fulfilling for you.
or could I go to a place where it could be likewise fulfilling to really invest in the next generation of people that would go out and lead and work? You know, could I try and help them succeed where I was unsuccessful or to take where I'd gotten to and do even better? And then also be in a place that was, you couldn't ask for anything better from a family perspective. And so when I thought about it that way, it was a pretty easy choice.
I'm curious. Again, we get a lot of negative views, and it's always as you get older, the generations behind you are worthless or useless or whatever. Now, granted, you are dealing with, I would argue, with probably some of the best college kids in the nation.
Mhm.
But what's this newer generation like, and how are they different or potentially the same as we were? You know, we graduated now 12 years ago almost. Doesn't seem like a long time, but there's definitely a cultural shift that occurs.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think there's more cultural impacts than there are generational impacts. And uh, I don't think, especially having been part of many of those types of conversations for that exact reason, as a West Point instructor, you know, being able to be involved in all the different military training that would go on there. Um, I don't think it's helpful to make those comparisons. And what I would see pretty regularly was that the things that, you know, because the classic interpretation would be, you know, old timers are harder, you know, more resilient, tougher. When they're trained the same way, they rise to the same occasion. They react the same way every other human being that's gone before them does. People that endure hardship together, um, you know, find pride in that. They get, but the people that would be making it easy on them would be the people that are our age. You know that you know, it's tough to train people to a really high standard. It's tough to do make somebody do hard things, but to do it the right way and be there doing the hard thing with them. So the easy thing is to make
That
it easy.
that that's the hard part, doing it with them.
Yeah.
Because when you decide, oh, I don't necessarily want to actually hold the standard myself, well, I'm going to make it easy because this is what I feel comfortable with. So
Yeah. And then that has obviously a really, it's seen very immediately as brazenly hypocritical. And then that's not going to have the right training outcome. Right. So, um, no, I think we got to work. I was super blessed. The DMI 6 at the time, the guy in charge of all the military training at West Point, he's still there. Um, he had a concept where he wanted to create a new program. You know, West Point for all these years has had. You know, I was never involved in it, but they had. You remember the grad school program where if you were super
mhm.
smart, you'd take the special classes and they'd help you go to get the grad school scholarship
Yeah,
or
I was like you. I majored in graduation by senior year, so
Yep.
I wasn't comma club, I don't think, but I wasn't far off.
Yeah, me too. But what was crazy to me is in all those other domains, physical, you got all the sports teams and everything, academic, you got the grad school stuff, but military, we never really had a one-stop shop
Right.
place to push yourself beyond the standard curriculum. And so that's what we stood up over the last 3 years. And so I got to work
That's cool.
with all the cadets that signed up for that. We set up advanced track military science classes, so I got to be part of making those, and that was all I taught, or primarily what I taught for the last 2 years I was there.
So this
Um,
sounds like Sandhurst almost, but a class and probably more structured and guided.
yeah, and Sandhurst is great. We never wanted to take away from that, but ultimately that is kind of a military adventure race in a lot of
Right.
ways. So
Agreed.
it's a great like team dynamics, great individual skills, and physical fitness, kind of practical military physical fitness, kind of all put together. But it's not so much officership, military operations in a
Agreed.
direct sense about what's going to make me better when I get out and I leave this place and I'm doing the
Doing the
job.
job.
So
I love that.
um,
I'm glad
so
they figured
that's
that out.
so that's what we did. And yeah, the people I got to work with there were outstanding. I was working with there was a junior that had a foreign exchange student junior who developed soup to nuts, a multifaceted night M4 range and competition that went along with it, that he ran, and
Wow.
I just watched over his shoulder. Um, and we made everyone's price for doing the cool night M4 range was that they got to do uh, a team race from the rifle range all the way back to West Point that started at about 1 o'clock in the morning.
I love that.
So no, we were having fun, and those guys respond well to that, right? So like, um, it's hard to be hard, but you go out there and you give people the right opportunities, they're gonna take it.
So you get a ton of fulfillment. I'm curious, how do you decide, you know what? So a lot of guys, just for reference, we're going to get over the 10-year mark, which you've now hit, and they go, well, I'm in it till retirement. I'm going to hit my 20.
Mhm.
You're making a very difficult, no surprise, choice to say, you know what? This has been very fulfilling. God is calling me elsewhere. I'm going to leave this here. And now I'm going to go fight child exploitation outside of the military.
Yeah,
How did we get there? And what you can or can't share, I know that might be somewhat different, but how do
sure.
we end up there? Because arguably, the family time that you enjoyed so much might go back on pause.
Yeah, it might. Yeah. No, so I mean, even prior to the time where I became a Christian back when I was a cadet at West Point, I still had that disciplined upbringing from my family, and so the concept of tithing was something that was still on my mind, and I was starting to get paid, so I knew, that that's something I shouldn't be keeping all this for myself. I should think of a good cause to put this against. So even as a freshman, we started getting paid, and I've always been passionate about learning about and kind of being supportive of the fight against modern day slavery because it's a very tragically unknown that slavery is more pervasive now than it ever has been before in human history.
Right.
Um,
Well, it's not a pretty topic to talk about, so we don't talk about it.
Sure. Yeah. And so I started donating to this organization that I'd highly recommend anybody look into called International Justice Mission. And they do kind of twofold legal and law enforcement support all across the world uh, to help people that are being taken advantage of. And through donating to them and just getting their updates and stuff over the years, I just slowly kind of had a trickle of constantly learning more and more about that. And that when I met Stacy and we got married, we found that we were both very passionate about that. And then we went into company command and started to interact with some of those really dark things where we were dealing with cases of child abuse within my unit, and times where if you I don't know if you've ever had to do some of these types of meetings, but when you have very difficult um, problems within your unit, there's a meeting that they run um, for the whole installation where the garrison commander and command sergeant major will sit down and kind of the commander goes to explain what they've done, and they have the police there and the doctor there and the
Right.
social worker there and everybody else. And some guys I would see walk out of that meeting and they'd look like they just got their face ripped in half um, because they had showed up and they I guess they did
They
not
weren't
have.
prepared.
But I had always been extremely encouraged by those meetings. But in one way I was encouraged because I loved getting into that meeting and saying, hey, this is what I've done. This is what we're looking at. This is all the information I've had. How can we pull in all these other people and better take care of the people that are in a tough spot here? But on the other hand, I, I'm I was disheartened by the fact that I would sometimes realize that I knew more than everybody. I knew more than the offender. I knew more than the victim. I knew more than the police. I knew more than the doctor. But I could, as the commander, I didn't have the power to do
Right.
more than just stuff with the soldier. And oftentimes the soldier was the problem. I needed to be able to do, and sometimes the soldier wasn't the problem. Sometimes the soldier was the victim. But regardless, I felt the need for more action to be being done in a more broad sense. And I knew what needed to be done, but I didn't have the role to be able to do it. And I was deeply dissatisfied with that. Um, and then, um, you know, had a year at grad school, so I had a lot of time to think about it. I'd continue to learn about it and continue to see that the side of that dark world that influences and impacts children is the worst, and it really has a multi-generational impact. And then, um, really unfortunately, but better to know than to not know. I eventually was informed that two of my aunts and my own mother all experienced abuse at the hands of family members, um, and it's
It's
just
a
so
lot more common than people realize.
it is.
We just don't talk about it because afraid afraid of how we're going to be viewed, afraid how others are going to be affected, or even the brain blocks it out for a certain period of time so that you can continue to try and live. So,
Absolutely. It's tough, and and it freaks people out. I'll talk to people in the military, some of the toughest guys in the world, and they'll immediately we'll start talking about this, and they'll say, "Hey, stop! I don't want to talk about this anymore because it scares me too much." It's like, well, hey, man, check it out. You're not the one that's being abused. The person that's being abused is way weaker than you and I, but we're freaked out by it, so we don't do anything to help. That doesn't make any sense.
or I found, and I'm curious, you dealt with a lot more elite people in the military, I would argue, than I have. Sometimes that's what drove them to get there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was part of how I look at it. I don't look at it as leaving my calling to go to a different calling. I see it as, my calling was to go um, confront evil and protect those who couldn't protect themselves. And I just learned through experience um, a different side of that I didn't necessarily know about when I was,
Right.
6, 7, 8 years old. Right. Thankfully, right. That I don't know if that's good for anybody, but um, and so, yeah, just trying to take that same attitude into a different area there.
Well, man, I'll be praying for you as that continues to progress. And uh, as always, I'm always impressed with your ethics, your character, and what you stand for. I finish every interview with this. So I'll give you the questions. You can think about it for a moment. I always ask, who would you recommend I interview? Um, 2 people, 3 people, and if you could please connect me with who those people would be. Obviously, understanding the idea of this is let's talk about how we overcome adversity because that's a
Mhm.
constant. Then the other piece of this is maybe you've never done interviews before, maybe you've published some papers or some studies, but if everything that you have put out in the world were to be removed, what would be your final message in regards to anything, whatever you decide that would be, for life, whatever that may be.
Yeah. No. So you want answers to those right now, or
If you need a moment, we can pause.
no?
If
I
you
got it.
got them, go for it.
Yeah. No, I think our mutual friends from over the years definitely provide um, a lot of great folks that you could talk to there. Matt, great guy to talk to. Ethan, Isaac, would be all guys that are on my short list. I don't have a long list of friends, but I have an
Neither
exceptionally
do I.
high quality list of friends. So um, I think those guys would all be um, wonderful folks to get their perspective out there. And then, if there was only one thing to break down is that my hope is that first and foremost, and because it's my responsibility as their father, first and foremost, my children, then I hope everybody can um, find fulfillment in a relationship with God, because all these things, all the darkness that we're talking about, all the difficulty that you might encounter, all of that, you break it down. The only way that it all makes sense, the only way that it gets worked out, is through that right understanding of God and His Word, and through a relationship with Him. That is it. It's the only way. It's just if you want black and white, that's a black and white, and if people are willing to walk down that road, that's exactly what they're going to find.
Well, I appreciate it. Technically, you outrank me, good sir. So I salute you as
All
we
right, man.
continue this. I appreciate you, and I look forward to watching you continue to chop down whatever evil is in front. And if there's any way I can help, I'd love to be a part of it. So,
Yeah, man.
all right, my brother, thank you very much.